Blog Talk Radio.
Turn our attention to tonight's guest, Klaus Heinemann, an author that holds a Ph.D. in experimental physics from the University of Tübingen, Germany. He is a former research professor at Stanford University in materials science and surface physics, the founder and chairman of the board of directors of a high-tech firm doing contract research at NASA, the author of Expanding Perception, and the co-author of the Orb Project, written in conjunction with Professor Miceal Ledwith. We are pleased to have Klaus on the line with us, and we're going to take a moment to welcome him to the show. Hi, Klaus.
Hi. Thank you for having me on the show, Patricia and Dana.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy work and your research to speak with us tonight.
Oh, I love to do that.
Well, that's awesome. Pat, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions about your work. First, for those that have not read your work, can you summarize what the book, The Orb Project, is all about?
Well, how do you summarize this best? I think it is a record that of evidence that there is more to life, start with a capital L, than life, and the normal life that we experience in the day-to-day, in our day-to-day experiences. There is, and I think there is evidence that we see now that we haven't had any chance of seeing before, let's say at least before the photography or digital photography, and in our photographs, that there is life beyond this reality that we always that we are so tied to.
And what drew your interest to this particular subject?
My wife and I were invited to take photographs at a spiritual conference, and when we downloaded these photos in our hotel room at the end of the meeting, or at the end of one of the meetings, we noticed that there were some features in the photos that were stunning, absolutely stunning at the time for me. I had never seen anything like this, and I had didn't have any explanation for them. So we, as a scientist, I cannot just take something at face value. I need to see what really is behind it. So the first thing that I did do is went back to the ballroom where we had the conference and looked and to see if there's any light that was in that place where I saw this little spherical or round bright light, and or any other explanation for it. And we didn't see anything. And then we looked closer at the large number of photos that we had taken at that event, and found many more that had similar, not quite as bright, but certainly similar features like that.
Oh, that's cool.
That's very cool. So how long have you been studying orbs?
Yeah, that happened about 5 years ago, and ever since then we looked very intensively with many pictures that we took. We also looked back at previous photographs that we took and found orbs in those. Sometimes it takes a real flashy event to get your attention. And that's what I kind of noticed, because I was then wondering, why is it that we had not seen these before? They were there in the pictures before. They were not that bright, but they certainly were in the pictures before. And this is just very interesting. We are so tuned to looking at what we want to see that if there's something that we don't expect, we often don't even notice it.
So you think that there's something that they're hidden in plain sight, and that you need something to stir your awareness to see them?
That happens at times. I mean, it's well documented that when the first ships arrived at the horizon of our country here, the natives didn't even see them because they had no idea what that could be, and they totally did not notice them.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, can you define precisely what an orb is?
Yeah, an orb is the word itself is just indicating that this is a circle, and it is an opaque circular phenomenon in a photo, and usually you see it in digital photos, but also there are some people who have seen and reported orbs and taken on regular film, emulsion cameras, and so these are phenomena that are typically round and that are either white, light, or mostly opaque, and have some interior structures that actually we can talk about those later in the broadcast.
Okay. In the Orb Project, you talk about why you believe people don't always see and experience spirits in the physical. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, that has several reasons. One is that when we got more into this research or this work with orbs, it's very hard, very difficult to even describe this as research. It is not research. It is just work with orbs. When we got into that, we noticed that they have a very, very high degree of mobility. They move extremely fast. Probably, it may very well be that they move at velocities that are much greater than the speed of light. So at least in our physical observations, they often exceeded, and we measured those. They exceeded several hundred miles per hour. So anyway, very, very fast. And then they can expand and contract in size very fast. And our eyes are fairly lazy. They cannot really distinguish anything that is moving that fast and changing its appearance that quickly. That is the main reason why we don't normally see them in with our bare eyes.
Now, do you have research that has a way of clocking their speed specifically, or do you think in the future there will be some kind of method for clocking that?
You can't really clock it, but you can at times see an orb in motion in a picture. You have a clear evidence where it moves from one place, holds still for a moment, moves on to another place that is a few inches further away, and then holds still and then moves on. All this within the duration of a flash, which is about 1,000th of a second.
Wow!
And so from that you can deduct that this speed of this orb was very, very fast.
Yeah, we have.
Certainly, just to say that right here, certainly much faster than any particles that are suspended in the air could ever move.
Wow.
Which is one of the reasons why we believe that these are not just reflections at airborne particles.
Pat, you were going to say something?
Yeah, we have pictures on our site that have orbs that are moving.
Yeah, they move like a couple of inches and then they move back.
Yeah.
I was always wondering how they got around so fast, but that's a really cool explanation. Now, we're going to just focus a little bit. In your belief, are there positive spirits and negative spirits?
Well, yeah, this is a heavy question. And I'm glad you're asking the question in terms of belief. Every evidence that we have with regard to orbs is such that they are not malicious, that there are no real malicious spirits around. My personal belief is that we should be talking more in terms of highly or less highly evolved spirits. and the less highly ones are maybe a little mischievous or whatever, but certainly not real evil. I don't see that. And we have looked at some orbs or some evidence of spirits that are behaving in a mischievous way. And they look indeed very different from the orbs that we are talking about. And we can go into much more detail on that, and I've actually done that in the book, The Orb Project. There are enormous differences. The highly evolved orbs are emitting light, very, very small amounts of light, and we can get into that also. They are emitting light, they are not absorbing light. And they are emitting light in the particular direction of the individual who is taking a photograph of them. So this all sounds very, very strange, but it is based on a lot of evidence that we have that these orbs are not emitting light in all directions, and so when you capture them, you just happen to get it. They are very, very directly aiming into your camera. Now, a mischievous orb or a dark spirit, if you will want to use that word, would not have that capability and really only absorbs light, which is a very different mechanism. So they are actually seen as dark spots hovering around around a haunted house or a church or a public place or something like that in the sky. So it's very difficult to see those.
So now, is it safe to say that these dark orbs are absorbing energy from their?
Yes, they are absorbing energy, and the light orbs are emitting energy. They are taking the energy that they are emitting from the environment, but they are actually emitting energy.
Now, when they're putting out this energy toward the individual, do you think that they purposely want to be captured on film?
Yes, exactly. That is the conclusion, and there is a lot of evidence that we have that explains or that justifies this conclusion, that they in fact do want to be seen, and they have now found a mechanism where they can be seen. And let me give you people often do not really appreciate how little energy is involved in seeing an image of an orb on a photo. This is very remarkable. If you picture that you have let's say a 100-watt light bulb, and you switch it on for 1 second and then turn it off. Let's see. Actually, it would be much less than that even. 1 second and then turn it off. 1/10 of 1 millionth of 1 billionth of that energy is all that it takes to see an orb on a photo, for an orb to become visible. So it's not an awful lot of energy. It's about 1/10 of 1 millionth of 1 billionth.
Okay, and with an orb photo that has like hundreds of orbs in them, is that a tremendous drain on the environment as far as energy speaking?
No. I'm talking about such a small amount of energy that it's hard to even imagine how little that is. This is something that was until very recently literally undetectable even with our best instruments. And the photo, the charge plate of a digital camera is in fact capable of detecting something that low in energy.
Wow. Yeah.
and so this is why we truly have not been able to see these phenomena in earlier times, when it took more energy to take a photo and the flash had to be brighter And we had an emulsion film where things were different. With the advent of digital photography, this became possible.
Oh.
And these, I'm not saying that the orbs are spirit beings. I'm saying, well, at least it is my hypothesis at this point, that they are emanations from spirit beings. And this is like holding a flashlight in your hand, and let's say you picture yourself in a pitch dark room and have a flashlight in your hand, and somebody else is there and sees you. He doesn't really see you, he only sees the flashlight that you move. And you control it, just as I would think the spirit beings, or the light beings, if you will, control the direction in which the orbs shine their light, which would be in your camera. So it is not that we are actually seeing spirit beings. We are just seeing certain emanations coming from them.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it is. In your opinion, why do spirits linger?
Why do they linger? Yeah, you know, what does that mean, linger? This is getting into maybe a little away from orbs and more into a personal belief system. I personally do believe that there is a world beyond ours, and that when we transition, we are literally transitioning from the reality that is limited by space and time into a reality that does not have these limitations. And there may very well be situations where a spirit is somewhat unaware of where it is and in what environment it is, or maybe not even aware that it's still that it no longer exists as a physical being. And so it doesn't really go where it's supposed to go, which is just where it is now after that transition is supposed to be. And so they're lingering around, around maybe persons or around places where they have felt comfortable during their physical lifetime. Now, I must say, and I really, you know, this is just a very crude description, but I must say that the number of such spirits lingering around is probably extremely low compared to the number of positive spirits, or positive beings that are around us all the time, and that have a very, very benign, very positive intention with us.
So what do you think the intentions of these spirits that want their image captured, or the orbs that want to be seen?
I would think that their intention is to help us, to be of assistance wherever they can. And it is very interesting and very heartening to see how many orbs can be seen around children, for example, or around people in distress, and in certain distress areas. There are so many examples of orbs in such situations that we cannot really deny that possibility. I can give you, if you will, an example of that.
Okay.
We had just not too long ago, my daughter-in-law, who has 3 little girls, got a photograph from a friend of hers, and she has 2 girls of her same age, of our granddaughter's age, about 3 and 4, 3 and 5, something like that. And she took these girls on a hike in a forested area here. And anyway, there was some talk about mountain lions being around here, which are actually being sighted more often. And my daughter-in-law called her friend who had these 4 kids there on this trail, and said, "Oh, by the way, be aware, be cautious of mountain lions." Anyway, they took a picture of the 4 girls there, and in that picture there were 4. That's the number of the girls. There were 4 very nice, bright orbs, as if they were going to say, "Hey, we're going to take care of you."
Huh. Cool.
It's, all of this sounds very strange, but I think if we open ourselves up to the fact that we are only in a very limited physical reality, that there's a lot more going on that we don't see, then we become a little more astute to these kind of things.
Now, since orbs are emanations of spirits and they tend to be around children, do you think that lends any credence to the idea that children have the ability to see spirits better or sense spirits better than adults do?
I think so. I mean, my wife and I have observed our 5 grandchildren with that in mind, and we often have the impression that they do see a lot more than we do. And it is well known that our educational system does a very, very good job in instructing children to disregard anything that is not what we would define as real. And so after some time, when they get to be 5 or 6 or 7 years old, they are already brainwashed enough in that direction. But before then, they do see these things.
Wow. Now,
maybe some more than others, but there is a lot of evidence.
What type of equipment do you use to photograph orbs? Just cameras?
Yes. People ask this question very often. And I think that you don't really have to worry too much about it. It's not what kind of camera, how expensive the camera is. It's not, the seeing orbs has to do with totally different criteria. So the camera could be or should be a regular, not too expensive, not too cheap, digital camera that is anywhere between, I don't know what, 3 and 10 or 3 and 12 megapixels. The higher resolution it has, the better it is, because then you can see more of the interior structure of these orbs. And then you should use a flash, and an electronic flash. We have seen some orbs in pictures that were taken without a flash, but the vast majority of orbs that you see is taken with a flash. In the book, especially my co-author, Miceal Ledwith, makes a point that many orbs may emit light or are emitting light in the infrared range of frequencies, light frequencies, meaning in the red or dark red area. And that these digital cameras typically are quite sensitive for radiation in that range, probably more so than regular film cameras. But I mentioned before that that regular film cameras can also capture orbs. And I have actually quite a good friend in Holland, and his name is Ed Vos, V-O-S. And he's a professional photographer, and he has taken hundreds or thousands of orb photos, with regular high-resolution, high-quality Leica cameras.
Oh, cool.
So you can use more expensive or less expensive cameras, and you can see it. What is much more important is that you take lots of pictures, not just 1 and 2, and think that will do, and that you then excuse me. And for this, to do this, film cameras are very expensive because you have to, that film is expensive. You have to buy it, so digital cameras cost nothing. The pictures that you shoot cost nothing. You can discard whatever you don't like and start fresh. So it's not a big deal. Also, with the digital camera, you can very easily process an image that you took, and that is actually often a key. The intensity of orbs is often not that great, and you can just barely see it on a normal photo. But when you use something, some digital enhancement, like you can do with a program like Photoshop or ADCC or something like that, then you can bring out the contrast of these orbs so that you can see them very clearly. And this is something that you can do without any condition, because you are applying this technique to the entire photo, and therefore it is totally legitimate to do. You are not producing anything that is not there. You are just increasing the intensity or the contrast of it. So that you make it more easily discernible.
Wow. So, how can
Go
you
ahead,
tell?
Pat. All right.
How can you tell the difference between a genuine orb and an orb that is the product of dust, water particles, and the like?
Yeah, let's first say that there is, when you take photos with a flash, there's always the possibility that you do have some kind of a particle around that the flash reflects on, and you would see that in your photo. That would be the argument of many people, that is all you're actually seeing. Now, so a reflection of the flash at airborne particles or droplets, moisture particles, or anything like that. The appearance of such airborne particles is actually very similar to that of orbs. And you would have to use this digital processing, certain techniques where you can distinguish the two. It is the argument, if your next question would be, like, how can you really say that not every orb in your picture is just a reflection of a dust particle. The argument is that so many people are seeing so many orbs in their photographs that it is just simply by virtue of statistics an impossibility to explain all of these as extraneous dust reflections at airborne particles. That just simply is far too simple an argument. And then, as I said, there are other. Do you want me to get a little more into this topic, or?
Sure. Yeah.
One argument that I mentioned is the speed that I already indicated. These particles in the air, and we've made experiments actually. We've literally simulated orb pictures with a spray can that we used in front of the camera or in dusty areas, and you do not see any evidence of streaks or of an orb or of a dust particle moving with any velocity that is near the velocity of orbs. Now, all these dust particle theories all hinge on one important fact, and that is that these particles have to be very close to the camera, probably within, or not probably, but they have to be within about 2 or 3 inches from the objective lens of the camera. Everything that's further away would be so small in the image and so that you wouldn't see it anymore. So if you have a picture of an orb that is clearly and without a question behind in a distance, at a distance of more than a few inches, then you, just by virtue of that fact, you have to say that is not something artificial. That's not something that you can explain with these theories. Now, we have seen a number of orbs that were behind objects that were about 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 feet away from the camera. And so that in itself explains that this is not an easy to explain phenomenon.
Oh.
So these orbs will be behind the head of a person or behind a wall, and so peeking out behind a wall, peeking out behind leaves of vegetation, or something like that.
Now, what is the most fascinating orb capture that you've ever captured?
The most fascinating, I think, is that very first one that we saw, because it was just the brightest we've ever seen, at least so far, and it was very, very unusual. So, and there goes our stories with that. But an probably equally fascinating orb we have seen much later, last year, when we were at an Orb conference in Germany. And after that conference, we were invited to what people would call an orb hunt, which is a nonsense description of what really happened. So, but we went out in the fields and tried to photograph orbs. And there was a person who had much more of a sensitivity than my wife and I had with these orbs. And he said, I sense there is one in that shed over there. And so it was in the field, and there was a shed that was open on one side completely, and probably years before, in its better years, used as a refuge for people who would be when there was rain or snow or something. So anyway, I photographed into that totally dark shed, and there were two very bright orbs. And one of them had something in it that I, until that moment, would have denied would be a possibility, a real possibility, and that is a face. That orb had facial features, human facial features. And so this then got us onto a whole new track of orb investigation. And I hope that there are these facial features. First, of course, I would deny it. And then I would say, is there anything in the background of that picture that would explain these features, and it would just make it random. And so we shot a number of pictures of that background so that we could then later analyze the orb against that background and see, yeah, there is really nothing in the background that could explain these facial features. So, and then more and more people sent me their pictures. And they say, I see faces in here. And I say, well, I don't. But now I have come to a very different understanding of this whole thing. And this understanding, am I rambling too much?
I don't know.
Okay, this understanding has to do with the fact that these orbs are emanations from very highly evolved spirit beings. And so these beings that make these orbs know what they're doing. It is not as if we are dealing with an object. We are dealing with something that is sentient, that has the ability to think and probably in many cases, quite advanced thinking. So they are capable of, if they are capable, which they are, of beaming their light directly into your camera, but not in the camera of another person who is standing right next to you and who's taking the same photo and doesn't see it in his or her camera. So if that's possible, then there may be even more possible. Obviously, they are also taking their energy, the little energy that it takes to beam their existence into your, the evidence of their existence into your camera. If they take this little evidence, if they are able to do that, they may also be able to adjust what they are beaming in such a way that they are putting in certain features that the people seeing them may, in fact, that may persuade them to say, yes, this is something real that I'm seeing here. And so there are people who are looking for facial features in orbs, and they will then actually attract those. It's almost like the law of attraction. If you're looking for something, you're actually getting it. For me personally, until the longest time, as I said, I literally denied that, and therefore I didn't see them in my pictures. But finally, there was one that was that strong that I could no longer deny it. And it wasn't that picture. You will actually see it in our next book. And you can also see it on my website. I put it up on the website. So anyway, that picture was so stark that it's no longer the question of is it a face or is it not, but the question was, for me, was who is it? Have I seen this figure before? Or what is it? What is the meaning behind it? What is this particular being telling me? So anyway, the long answer to a question of your question.
It was a fast orb capture.
The most fascinating orb capture. So these two are the ones that I would use as an answer to your question.
Okay.
Can orbs be seen with the naked eye, and if not, how come?
As I mentioned, the reason why you don't normally see it with the naked eye is because they move too fast, and because the intensity that they spread out is too low. So these will be the main reasons. When people see, there are people who see orbs, or there are people who sense orbs, and actually the word sensing is a much better way, because they may be. We all have what we call intuition, what's called intuition. Some people have it more, some people have it less, but all people have it. And this realm that we're talking about, this realm of existence that is beyond our physical realm, has that communicates to us through our senses, not necessarily through our normal visual capabilities. So there are some people who sense these beings around. We have a friend who is very much into orbs, and when we are together, he says, well, there is an orb up there in the corner, take a picture. And then we take a picture, and there is a nice, bright orb in the photo. And for a while I thought, well, how come we can see that? Until I learned myself to get a hunch of that. And these hunches are very, very subtle, extremely subtle, but they're there. And so you can actually see an orb. I don't really see it with your eye. You just sense there is one.
Now, in the Orb Project, you state that photographs of orbs frequently show spirit beings positioning themselves among people or objects in such a way that you can infer a meaning. Can you talk about this a little bit and give us an example?
Well, yeah, there are lots of examples, and actually our next book that is going to deal with these with this aspect of orbs. Let me give it maybe a couple of examples. There was a lady who sent me a picture, and with a very moving story behind it. Her 18-year-old son had tragically died in a traffic accident, and she was, of course, very unhappy for quite some time about this whole situation. And about a year later, her daughter got married, and this was a fairly festive situation. And she, there was an instance where she was taking a photo of her daughter and her new son-in-law, and she was thinking in her mind, and she actually described that in her own words, that how nice it would be if her son would see this happy occasion. And in that photo was an orb that had positioned itself directly on the back of her daughter, in a fashion that is in a way very much beyond what you would get as a regular incidental occurrence, where the orb just simply was right there and attaching itself to it and saying kind of something like, well, don't worry, I'm here. You can't see me, but I can see you. And probably something like that. Now there are not just one or two or three of these stories. There are many hundreds. And many people experience them. We had an interesting experience ourselves, my wife and I, about a year ago, when we were at the Science and Consciousness Conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we were in our hotel room, and we had a 2-hour scheduled phone interview, very similar to this one here, about orbs. And the interview took place from 7 to 9 o'clock in the evening, and it went very well, and we were kind of happy. And when it was over, we wanted to grasp a little bit of fresh air, and so walked around and ended up on the back side, on the far side of our big hotel, the La Fonda Hotel in Santa Fe, and the hotel was hardly lit from a little bit of street lighting, and there was there were no other people in the street. We were kind of alone, and we looked up and saw somewhere on the 4th floor our hotel room, clearly marked with a little balcony, which there were only three rooms that had a balcony. So my wife and I agreed we should take a picture of that and see if an orb can show us where our hotel room is. That was the expectation, and my wife took the picture, just one, because we only wanted one picture in this case, so to keep it a little cleaner. And in that picture there were 2 orbs, not one, marking the right and the left side of the balcony of our room.
Cool.
Oh.
This is not random. This is definitely way beyond random. And similarly, there are numerous other situations where orbs position themselves wanting to say something. Well, let's see. I need to add to this story that I did feel in that interview that we were not alone, and that there was there was benevolent help from the unseen reality, to use these words. So we've seen many of these circumstances. A conference presenter thanking a singer at the conference for her beautiful performance, and there was an orb right at the mouth of the singer, or
Oh, wow.
an orb at, yeah, or an orb at the hand of a teacher who is just using his hand to make a point. And I mean, it goes on and on. There is at the same conference where we saw the first orb. This was a spiritual type conference, and they had what people would call a prayer basket in the front, where the audience were about 400 people, so it was quite a large audience. They were encouraged to write down certain prayer requests and then put that in the basket, and then the minister would kind of pray over the basket, and what you have at conferences of this nature. And in one of the pictures that we have of this basket with these prayer requests, there was an orb right below it. It was that thing was sitting on a chair, and underneath the chair was a nice, well, not that bright, but a nice clear orb. Oh. Yeah, these stories go on and on. That as if if you really think about it, these orbs, their way of communication is not one of speech. They cannot speak. We cannot hear them. We cannot hear their voice. Maybe some people can, but I cannot. So the only way that they can make themselves visible is by means of their positioning, and maybe by color, and maybe with these faces. But the positioning is the most direct, the clearest way of making a statement.
Oh. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left for the show, and we'd like to discuss the topic of the interior structure of orbs. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. There is an orb is not just a blob of something, but it looks like there is a very definite interior structure to it, almost as much as it would be, if you look at a person, and there is a structure in a picture, and this structure indicates how you look like, how your face looks like, and so on. The structure of orbs is often one. It looks like a mandala. It looks like there's a definite structure in this interior. Often there is what looks like an eye, something that is missing. Something. Often there is there are 2 or 3 of these eyes in an orb. Sometimes there are very little bright spots on an orb. It all depends.
Now, are there different structures between like a positive orb and perhaps a darker orb?
I don't think so. And it's more like it looks like their personality. And I have never gotten as far as saying that you can see a very specific feature. But I would definitely have now say that you can see classes of orbs. For example, we have taken many pictures around the famous healer John of God in Brazil, in Amazônia, and the pictures of orbs, or the orbs that we photographed there, looked generally quite different from the orbs that we observed here around people in let's say in celebrations, or also around children. So there, these interior, the most central spot of the orbs was often very bright white, whereas in the orbs around here, there may be more, there may be darker spots in the center, or darker spots around, or very bright spots in various places.
Oh.
And again, the orbs that we saw around children look a little different from, again, they look more homogeneous, with less structure inside. Well, and then, of course, I talked about the actual appearance of something like faces in orbs.
What about colors?
Yes, colors are at times visible, so orbs are not always plain white, but well, how would I say that? I personally am not terribly impressed with the colors, because colors are just nuances of physical vibrations, color, and you have a huge spectrum of vibrations when you're talking physics, and so just a fairly minor variance of vibrations already has an enormous influence if you look at it in terms of color. And so there may or may not be a significance in that. But I do think that people who are specifically inclined to work with colors, to look at colors, they will probably get the same response that I said about faces, that they will see orbs that are more colorful. And I have seen quite colorful orbs, often orange or reddish, sometimes in the blue direction. So you do see colors.
Okay. Pat? What would an image with a huge number of orbs infer?
Well, it could have many different answers. You could have many different answers to that. First, let me say that it is not how many orbs you see, not even how bright they are, that really matters ultimately. I don't think that you can equate or that you can make a direct extrapolation in such a way that you say the brighter the orb and the bigger the orb, the better it is, or the higher evolved the being that's behind it. That would be too simplistic. If you have many orbs in a picture, there may be a specific indication that needs to be communicated, that they want to communicate. I have just recently received a beautiful picture of a young woman who was playing the flute. She's a musician, and she's playing the flute very well. And in a barn that they own, that's her favorite place to play the flute. And in that picture, there were numerous orbs of the normal kind. One of them actually directly located at her flute, as if it wanted to indicate, hey, I really like your playing. And and I'm with you. But there are also very many, I don't know, maybe 50 in one photo, of very tiny orbs, so small that you would almost totally overlook them. And these tiny orbs, they're all colorful. If you have to magnify them quite high in order to see them at all. They're colorful, they're different, they're all in the red color. They have an eye in the middle, and they do not all look alike. They have slightly different appearance, but they are very, very tiny. And I had not seen a picture like that before, and there must be a meaning related to this quantity. And then so I asked this lady, what is it? What do you think these tiny little orbs mean? And she says, oh, that's clear. Those are the people who I have always loved to be around me when I played my flute. And
Now, we have about 3 minutes left for the show. Can you tell us quickly how you would address a skeptic when they approach you and say that orbs are not paranormal or supernatural or any kind of proof of spirit activity?
Yeah, well, I would say the evidence is overwhelming. As I already mentioned, it's the sheer number of orbs that are showing up is way more than you could possibly explain with your simple arguments, or maybe not so simple arguments. But and even if it was so that you could explain an orb as a reflection on or at an airborne particle, even then, just the location of it in the image, where it actually appears and how it appears is beyond the random, what you could call random. So we may in fact get at some point in time, we may in fact get to the point where we can say, well, we can explain this orb. It is such and such. But then we still have not explained the fact that they are having, with their positioning and with their general appearance in the specific moment, that they are expressing a very, very direct message.
And where can people access your website and get more information about your work and writing?
Well, they can buy the book, The Orb Project by Ledwith and Heinemann, and they can go to my website, which is healingguidance.net/Klaus, which is my first name, KLAUS.htm.
Well, thank you. Pat, I think we're going to wrap it up, and we appreciate having you on the show this evening, and thank you for joining us tonight and sharing your work and your writing and your beliefs. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, we
You're
do.
very welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, now it's come time to wrap up another great episode of ISIS Paranormal Radio, as we are out of time. But again, we give our thanks to Klaus Heinemann for joining us. We invite you to tune in next week, Sunday on March 22nd, 2009, as we interview the pagan author Patricia Telesco and best-selling author, the Victorian Grimoire, The Goddess in My Pocket, How to Be a Wicked Witch, and the Kitchen Witch's Cookbook. We also want to tell all of our pagan community celebrating Sabbath next Friday to enjoy the holiday. Again, as always, we thank all our listeners for tuning into the show. If you'd like to be on our show, you can email isisinvestigator@AOL.com to make your request. Don't forget to tune in to the show every Sunday at 6 p.m. Until next time, have a great week. Good night and merry part.
Good night, merry part.
Electron as we continue to explore Orbs' experience. And ISIS Paranormal Radio.